Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Amongst other things. We've only got a few days left to the campaign. Do you think these sorts of things, again, the conversation that John had with his so-called friend, will they change the dial?
I'm not sure it will totally change the dial. I actually do think that the Boris Johnson incident is more of a game changer and it is more serious. I think there will be people that empathise with politicians having private conversations and saying things indiscreetly, as a lot of people do. But it is good timing for the Conservatives that this story has come out today, and we can't ignore that. It's a good distraction from what was a really disastrous day for the Conservatives yesterday. All
right, let's talk about political advertising. Alex Tate is here, swap chairs with John Ashworth, co-founder of the Coalition for Reform in Political Advertising. Tell us about this idea of some sort of legal controls.
We think basically the fact that there are no rules in political ads is a big problem. And I think, you know, as was just being discussed, this has been a dirty campaign. We want some rules put in place. So one of the fundamental things we want to guard against is misleading information, and effectively the public would call it lies in political advertising. So that we've got some similar standards around the only area that isn't governed by the advertising regulator, the Advertising Standards Authority, political advertising, to keep it in line with their mantra of legal, decent, honest and truthful. And actually, I think there's been examples in this election this isn't a partisan issue. There have been examples from all across the political spectrum.
Well, shall we show the viewers and the panel some of these examples? This is one from the Conservatives. Perhaps you can talk us through it. This was the Fact Check UK when they changed their Twitter account.
And this has been, I think that one of the features of this election actually has been there's been some new ground broken in some senses in terms of some of the techniques that have been used in political advertising. So the Twitter account being changed to Fact Check UK during the leaders' debate is certainly a new technique, but also, actually, if you look at other sort of methods the Conservatives have used, the doctored Keir Starmer video, which had the ending slowed down so that it looked like he didn't know the answer to a question. You know,
there's this from the Labour Party. This is the bus. Again, we'll send Trump £500 million a week. Let's fund US drug firms, not our NHS.
That's right, yeah, and there's a line under that that talks to the fact that there's been discussion to sell off the NHS over the last 2 years, and clearly that's not a real bus as well. But the Liberal Democrats has had some pretty good examples as well, I think, if you look at the other side of the political spectrum. So there's been a lot of bad use of data and bar charts and figures by the Liberal Democrats.
Yes, we've showed that bar chart where they actually do.
It has to be said.
Well, I mean, the point is the problem that bad? Is it any worse than it has been? Obviously, Alex says yes. What do you think?
I mean, I think that we need to be careful here because when, say, Full Fat looked at the Conservative ads that were put on Facebook, 7,000 in a couple of days, 88% of them were lies. We're in danger here of creating a false equivalence. The reason that the Conservative operation is so dirty and they are lying so much, essentially running a propaganda
campaign... Rachel, we've just shown the Labour Party doing the same. It's happening on all sides.
Let me finish this point, and that's precisely the point. That there is this impression of a false equivalence, which is precisely what the Conservatives want. They want that state of confusion so that the reason so many voters have not made up their minds yet is because they're confused. They think all politicians are the same. There isn't an equivalence between hang on a minute, between 88%, according to Full Fact, on Facebook, and one instance that they found of the Labour... They did. This is what they said.
Alex is here to talk it. Hang on, go on.
We've been running a project with a team of volunteers over the election, and we found most of the main parties have got examples. There are numerous Labour examples. There are some parties that have more than others, but
Which
it isn't
party
a partisan
has more than
issue.
others?
The Conservatives and Liberal Democrats.
And by how much do the Conservatives have more than others?
So the process that we've been going through is to gather evidence to show misleading claims. So we've not calculated it in that way. But it isn't a partisan issue. Now, I think the UK, we've done some research with YouGov this week that shows I think the public's had enough as well. We asked, do you think it should be a legal requirement that factual claims in ads are accurate? And equally weighted across Leave and Remain voters. 87% of people said yes.
But Ian, what about the response to Rachel? Says there is more evidence.
Well,
about
Rachel's view is always that it's a bit like Animal Farm. All Tories bad, all Labour good. I mean, she can't bring herself to criticise anything that the Labour Party have ever done.
I have in the past criticised
I've called
them.
out the Keir Starmer video. I think that was crass, and various other things that I think are wrong. I'm very happy to criticise them for, but I think regulating this sort of thing is quite difficult, because what Rachel will regard as a lie, I might regard as an opinion. Facts, I mean, fact is an interesting word, because a fact can mean different things to different people. If you have a statistic, fine, you can't question that. But I think if we're going to get into the realm of trying to regulate opinionated adverts, where effectively say, well, we think this is bad because, I mean, that's quite a difficult thing to do, isn't it?
Well, so philosophically, that's a good point. But actually, when you look through the examples, if you look through the report that we produced, and we've documented examples from across the different parties, what we're saying is that we're not saying there should be rules around attack ads, manifesto commitments, future promises. It's just if you say something is an objective fact, you should have to substantiate it in the same way that all other advertising has to.
Do you think, for example, the 1997 New Labour, New Danger ads with Tony Blair with the demon eyes, now I would say that crossed a line there, but you can't really regulate that, can you?
It's a bit
Surely
different,
you have
yeah.
to leave it to the electorate to think, well, actually, that went too far. We think less of the Conservatives because of that
was
ad.
pulled up, of course. But, yeah, no, it's specifically... one of the key points we're making is about factual claims.
But how would you regulate? I mean, who would decide? I mean, there will be grey areas.
Well, and again, we think it's political will is what we need. And we need some political leadership, actually, to react to, I think, the public demand for there to be some change in this area. We believe, actually, in the document, that there's a quite simple code that is aligned to the code that governs all other advertising, all these many rules that all other advertisers have to abide by. Yeah. And you could if you could get the parties to agree to that, and you just extend the remit of the Advertising Standards Authority, then you've got a mechanic to complain to it, and you fill this loophole that exists for political advertising.
Well, let's just show you this from Plaid Cymru's leader Adam Price. He's a man of his word. He introduced a similar bill when he was an MP, and in the next Parliament, Plaid Cymru's MPs will introduce a bill to make lying by politicians a criminal offence. What do you make of that?
Well, it's wider than what we're advocating. So the scope of what we're looking at is political advertising.
Well, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Because, look, nobody approves of anybody telling a lie. But again, how do you define in law exactly what a lie is in the circumstances that someone thinks somebody has lied?
Can I just point out that we are completely missing the point? It's not about the lie. It's about creating an atmosphere of confusion so people don't know
How do you put that into the law?
So people don't know what to believe, and therefore they think, oh, they're
but
also...
you can't regulate like that, can you, Rachel?
they're also the same, I don't know what to do. It's essentially a form of voter suppression.
Are we not underestimating the intelligence of the electorate here? Because most people, if they see something that they regard as a lie, they will think less of the politician or the party that promulgates it.
And isn't that the job of us? Isn't that the job of
Exactly.
journalists who be constantly looking at what politicians are saying and
I
trying
mean, that Fact Check UK thing, that didn't need regulating because the whole media called it out.
There's a couple of points
Quite
here.
rightly.
There's a couple of points here, though, and I think, and you're right, it is definitely the role of journalists. Advertising doesn't necessarily, and we're talking, specifically paid advertising, doesn't necessarily have that filter. And actually, we're not talking about that sort of wider topic. We're just saying that you should have to substantiate factual claims. And actually, the point you're making around can the public decide for themselves? And there is this sort of line about, the public aren't stupid. They can decide for themselves whether something's accurate or not. And my background is as an advertiser. The main impact of advertising is actually subconscious as opposed to conscious. So there is the reach and the frequency that these ads get allows sort of disinformation to enter the public discourse without the sort of check that...
and that's why it's worse, because you have social media and you can have these images just go viral in seconds and they might just be totally untrue.
All right, well,
and that is an issue.
We're going to just because we're going to show you two examples of where, well, hopefully they won't need fact-checking. This is from both leaders of the Conservative and the Labour Party. Let's have a look. Ian?
That was fascinating because it is actually a really good campaign ad, but it's plagiarising a Labour ad from Dr. Rosina Allen Khan, who's standing in London. Won't mention the constituency. She did one of these, and it was absolutely superb.
But she's plagiarising the film, isn't she?
But she's plagiarising
So I think
the film.
the film love actually seems to be popular.
Things like that, I think, are really good. And I don't. How would you regulate that?
We're not anti-advertising, quite the opposite. We just think there should be rules around advertising to keep it in line with.
I think we're just going to judge how successful or effective these might be. Let's have a look at Jeremy Corbyn's.
I'll bet Jeremy Corbyn will be glad when this election is over so he can go back to wearing his commie hat. What is a commie hat? I wear a cap. It's a bit like when I was told I was riding a Maoist bicycle. It's a bicycle!
Rachel?
I mean, I think that, obviously, Jeremy Corbyn's team is very, very good at social media and video, but I think what's interesting about that is that the reason it's so successful is because it's such a contrast, you know, this funny, human bloke is such a contrast with what people have understood to believe that he is because of all the relentless attacks on him for the last 2 years.
Why haven't they done this before? Because that was brilliant. It showed a real human person there. You can't, as Linton Crosby always says, you can't fatten the pig on market day. It's like 3 days before polling day. Why didn't they do this at the beginning?
I think that's a good question.
We agree, Rachel. Fantastic.
But a lot of the parties are ramping up their spend, actually, in the last few days. There's some research that shows that the closer you get to polling day, you know, the more effective some of your advertising can be.
Because people start paying attention round about
But the
now.
thing with the Love
Normal
Actually
people,
one
not
is that
us,
in the film,
obsessed.
Keira Knightley doesn't choose the man with the boards. She sticks with her husband. And I think
Don't point out the inconsistencies, Laura. It makes it obviously far too awkward. Alex, thank you very much. We're going to welcome Ed Davey in just a moment. But what did you think of those two? Do you think they will be effective as ads for both parties?
I thought they were good. I mean, I know because I live in the bubble that the Tory one was copied, and that puts you off. And some people might find it a bit cheesy, but I also thought the Jeremy Corbyn one, it was very good. They're the best adverts I've seen compared to, you know, politicians lecturing down the camera at you. They are both quite good.